Yeah, Jesse, good afternoon. We're back for podcast two, and podcast one went so well.
The responses from the podcasts and the clips that we put out were awesome to see. It's so exciting to see women engaging and men engaging. And to be honest with you, I was just noticing really in the last week the amount of men that are showing up in comments in a positive way is starting to really pick up. Like I actually think that as much as we were reaching women sooner, right? Because they're more on TikTok and they're seeing this topic, but men are starting to chime in, and I actually had a comment this morning that just said, "Thank you for this. I appreciate learning more about this, and I can see how this is going to help my marriage."
Yeah, but I agree with you, Jesse. I think we're getting some unbelievably good comments, and I think during this show we're going to touch on a few of the comments that we're receiving. And um, there's a lot of women out there who just want to say their piece. They want
Yep.
to express themselves, and I think we're giving them a little bit of a channel to do that, which is fantastic. I mean, the one post which I shared with you, which was amazing, was a man who said, basically, um, he didn't believe his wife.
Right.
He thought she was exaggerating, and how he's come to listen to us, and he realizes she wasn't exaggerating, she's telling the truth. So, for us, to all the men out there, to all the women out there, please just keep on dropping us nuggets of comments, because it really does help us to find some direction and to keep turning up with enthusiasm and positivity.
And I think we have to quite honestly, we really have to rely on women in the community sharing this with their husbands or sharing this with their friends or just helping us get the word out. So we really appreciate the fact that that is happening. I can't tell you how many women in comments are saying, "I'm sending this to my husband," and of course, I'm like, "Fantastic, thank you."
I agree, Jesse. Have you got a couple of comments there you can share with us and share with the listeners? That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, they're this one is 2 minutes ago. Menopause can be a very lonely time. You feel guilty for feeling the way you do and have to sometimes pretend everything is fine because not everyone around you understands. That's literally 2 minutes ago. These are the types of comments that are coming in just so fast. And like you said earlier, women are looking for a space where they can feel like they're being heard. And I think it's super fulfilling, and I'm very grateful that we have an opportunity to provide a space like that. But when you read comments like that, Laurence, it reminds us that despite the fact that this is happening to a billion women across the globe right now, they feel alone.
They do.
They feel alone. They feel
Undoubtedly, they
like
do.
I had a comment this morning that just said, my mom didn't prepare me for this, and my friends aren't talking about this, and I'm suffering alone. I'm suffering in silence, and these types of comments that come in literally every day just tells you that this is something that not only we have to take seriously as husbands and men, but the thing I didn't see coming is that the medical community has to actually take this seriously. I didn't
Of
expect that
course.
at all. When I started learning about this, I didn't expect that at all. Do you see anything? I mean, you're over in the UK, I'm here in the US. Most of the audience on my TikTok channel are US and Canada. I mean, what are you seeing in the UK as far as how women are feeling about this? Are you getting all the same messages that I am?
Jesse, 100% yes. I think the one thing with menopause is menopause doesn't care if you're thin or fat.
Hmm.
It doesn't care if you're blonde or brunette. It doesn't care what your religious background is. So, and it definitely doesn't care whether you live in Dallas or Durham. It really doesn't care if you're living in London or New York. And I think exactly what the women in the USA are going through, they're going through in the UK as well. And they've got the same frustrations. Our doctors are exactly the same as your doctors. The GPs don't go through a curriculum on hormonal health. They're just general practitioners, and they have to specialize in hormonal health to have any information. But it's those very same doctors who are working with their patients and trying to advise them on something they've never studied about, which is so infuriating. It's so frustrating. And that's why we get so many women who receive so many misdiagnoses.
You know, I got to be honest. I've gotten some comments where women have said to me, "I'm learning more about this from you and this podcast than I am from my doctor." And if I'm being honest with you, Laurence, like that kind of frightens me. I didn't get.
That's me too.
I mean, it frightens me that that's a reality. It frightens me
Yeah.
that that's a reality, but it also frightens me because I'm not here to give medical advice. I'm not a doctor. You know, we aren't medical professionals, but what we are caring husbands. We are caring men. We believe that this is a complete injustice as to how women have to go through this and how they're suffering alone in this. Um, but I don't really know what to say to women who say something like that, who say that they're learning more from me than their doctor. That actually feels like a lot of weight to carry. Do you? I mean, do you feel that way, or what? What's your response to a woman who would tell you they're learning more from you than their doctor? I mean, how do you carry that?
Jesse, is a very good question, and we must stress this when we're not medically trained. But I think what I do well and what you do well is we're able to listen to the other person, and we're able to listen with empathy,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really important. So you and I are we have a natural skill that we're interested in the other person. And I think so many of the women who come on or who want to talk about this literally want someone to listen to them. You know, they're not looking to any of us for diagnosis. They're not looking for us at us really for information. I think what our community can do is help to share good information between everyone that's part of it. I think that's really important. But you know, you and I, at the end of the day, we can't write a prescription. We can't even advise someone. And I keep on saying on my posts, please seek a gynecologist.
Mm-hmm.
Please seek a hormonal health expert, because you know that is the one bit of advice I can give. Is if your GP is not trained to work with hormonal health, then stop asking him or her for answers. Find out who is trained and then go to that person. And I had this very conversation with my wife, and I'd really like to stress this, Jesse. My wife was saying, yes, but so many women can't afford it.
Mm.
How do you put a value on your own health? I don't know what it costs to go to a gynecologist in America, but I know here in the UK it can cost anywhere from £175 to £300. But you know, if you're really, really struggling, and that expert is going to cost you a couple of £100 out of your pocket, or a couple of $100 out of your pocket, then I urge you to spend it. And I'm not benefiting from that in any way, shape, or form, but we can't put a price on our health. And would you rather live for 65 years with average health, or 65 years thriving, feeling as good as you can? And some of these hormonal health experts have got the ability to make you feel better. And if they've got that ability, then I urge you to go and see them.
Well, and I think what you're talking about too is something that Dr. Mary Claire Haver has said, which is there's a difference between a lifespan and a health span. And she says, I can't control my lifespan, but I can control my health span. And how healthy are you going to be for however long you're going to be here? And the one thing that I was thinking about when you were just talking was there is information out there. There are solutions out there that women can find. That the information is available, even though the best information would be find a doctor who's certified in this and knows what they're talking about and go talk to that doctor. And to your point, when you were talking to, your wife, or you're hearing comments, if you're seeing a doctor right now that isn't talking to you about hormones and isn't giving you a solution around this, you need to find another doctor. And that's not me talking, that's Halle Berry talking on the Oprah Winfrey
Correct.
special. That's exactly what she said. You need to go find another doctor. If your doctor has been taking care of you for 30 years, delivered your children, great. I'm sure that you love that doctor, have a great relationship with that doctor, but if they are not serving you right now in menopause, you need to find another doctor. That is a powerful thought. And to your point, whether if it's not affordable, If literally going to see a doctor is completely off the table for a woman, the one thing that I feel like I've found is there is a lot of information out there if you can find a trusted source. And if you can
Correct.
find a trusted source, you can find a lot of information about what your options are. Now, if you start going down the road of HRT, well, that might not, that's obviously not something you're going to necessarily self administer. Well, you can self administer once it's prescribed to you, but you're not going to just get that over the counter. However, you can at least read a lot of information about what might be going on with your body and learn more about that. And that's a start. It's not a medical solution, but it is something that I feel like a lot of, husbands in particular could benefit from, but women could too. And
Correct.
I say that simply because that's what women are saying to me. When I hear in these comments, women saying that they don't understand this, they're confused, they don't know anything about what's going on with their bodies. That's not me saying that. They're saying that, and what I'm saying is, I think those solutions are out there. That information is out there. The challenge is finding a trusted source.
Correct, Jesse. And I'm going to go one step back on that because in the UK we have a thing called the NHS, and the NHS is free to everyone that lives in the UK. And this is where, and it's part of the problem because it was never built to deal with menopause the way it should be dealt with. So the NHS, we work through our GPs to then get an appointment with the NHS, which is the hospitals and that type of thing. But the problem with the GPs is the GPs are there to put a plaster on a sore. And what I mean by that is when you go to see your GP, they will only see you for a maximum of 10 minutes because they only get given 15-minute appointments. 5 minutes is taken to fill in all the notes and update the records. So they are just a conveyor belt of let's see someone, they've got appendicitis, they've got a kidney problem, they've got a cough, they've got this, and they're just there. They're churning people. That's all they're doing is they're churning people.
Wow.
As a woman with menopause, and you could be going through 25, 28, 35, even more symptoms, you need someone to sit down with you and slowly go through what's impacting you. What are your issues? What are your fears? What's scaring you? What's not scaring you? How's your mental health? How's this? How's that? Do you understand that estrogen's being stripped from your body and it's not being stripped slowly? It's like it's gone. You know, is a carrot, is a cauliflower going to give you back your estrogen? You know, go and ask those correct questions because there is so much noise on the internet and so much about diet. And of course, diet can do certain things for you and exercise can do certain things. But the reality is, your body has been stripped of estrogen. And you need to go and ask a qualified person how you replace that estrogen. What can you do to get your estrogen levels back up? And I'm not the person here to tell you that, and nor you, Jesse. So I urge anyone, one of the real reasons you want to go to a gynecologist is that they've got the time to sit down, or a hormonal health expert, the time to sit down with you, listen to you, listen to what your problems are. And you should have a whole host of questions to ask that person. What happens if this? What happens if that? What about cancer? What about this? What about that? You should be going to that hormonal health expert or your gynecologist with a ream of questions and seeking answers from someone who knows what they're doing inside out.
Okay, I'm going to pause there. I'm going to go turn off. I just wanted to give you enough room.
So Jesse, I've had a number of questions, and as you well know, we've had hundreds of comments this week, if not thousands of comments. And
Yeah.
one of the questions that keeps on appearing back on my feed is why will my husband not listen to me? Why, when I try and talk to my husband, does he switch off? What would your answer be to that? And why, in your opinion, is it easier for me or for you as a man to speak to another man about something so personal rather than your wife talking to you about what's so very personal?
Yeah, I think this is something that I'm still struggling with, if I'm going to be honest with you, Laurence. I'm still navigating this myself. I'm still trying to understand why some men are saying the things that they're saying in comments, or why some men are acting the way they're acting towards their wife based upon what wives and are sharing in the comments. I can tell you that it probably goes back thousands of years as to why a man would rather hear something from a man. I don't know the answer to that question, and and if it's true, which I do think it is, large in part, but the what I'm trying to harness is, okay, fine. A man would rather hear about menopause from another man, or a man would only believe that menopause is real if another man explained it to him. You know what? I don't even want to fight that battle as to why that's the case, because as ridiculous as that sounds, I don't know how far back that goes or how deeply ingrained in men that is. But if it is true, and if that is what is going to get the message out, I'm signing up for it. So if a man will only hear this from a man, fine. I'm here to give you that message so that you can hear it, so that we can help support women that way. I would love for that to not be true. I would love for that to not be the case, but it does appear like it is. And it goes beyond that. I've had women tell me that their doctors are only, you were just talking about the doctor's appointments in the UK and how the GPs, work, over here. And I don't know if you've heard similar things over there, but, and I'm guessing it's probably the same, but women are saying that they're getting better support from their doctors when their men are coming with them to their appointments,
Yes.
which, is just sort of further makes this all seem so ridiculous. This dynamic between men and women in this particular subject, I think, is something that I'm going to continue to explore and try to, figure out for a really, really long time. But I do think that on the flip side, just to be a little bit more glass half full on this topic, I have absolutely heard many women coming into the comments saying, I have shared these videos with my husband and now he's listening. I've shared these videos
Fantastic.
with my husband and he is paying attention. I've had husbands come in and say, thank you for making videos on this topic. It's helping me learn about it. So I think it goes both ways. I think there's sort of a tragic side of this, which is men won't listen to their wives. But I think that there's also a positive side, which is that is happening in some cases. And I think that if we can share this message and they'll hear it, well, then that's what we need to do.
Jesse, and I also think, and we only talk from our own experience and what we've seen, but I'm able to speak to my wife because we make the time to sit down, we turn the TV off, we we have a proper adult conversation. But I think so many people are trying to have a conversation whilst they're doing other things. So the conversation comes from the woman and it feels like a lecture. You don't get it. You never listen. You don't even try. Now, as a man, I'm like, okay, mom. Yes, mom. No, mom. Three bags full, mom. So now I'm not seeing you as my equal. I've almost shut off because I feel that you're trying to lecture me as the superior adult in the family. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's how some of us very basic men think, where there are certain subjects, even in my household, that are very difficult to broach, to have conversations around. And it's almost finding the right time to have those conversations. And then it's one person, and it's very emotional for obvious reasons coming from the woman, but it's almost like she's got to take small steps for him to start to understand, wow, do you know that I wake up and when I wake up in the morning, I feel exhausted? He's probably thinking, why? You've just slept for 8 hours. Do you know that I am struggling to fall asleep? Do you know that I'm having broken sleep? Do you know that I'm waking up 3 to 4 times during the course of the night? When I wake up, it takes me 15 minutes, 20 minutes to fall asleep. So by the time I wake up in the morning, when you combine all my heat regulation, my hot flashes, and everything combined into one, I'm waking up feeling absolutely exhausted in the morning. And I think it's how we say it to each other that that's where the difficulty lies, because us men are real simple creatures, And you know that, Jesse. In the
Mm-hmm.
back of his mind, he's just thinking to himself, oh, she's so grumpy, she's moody, she's just trying to come up with an argument that defends herself, sex is out the window. And these are questions, or not even questions, these are statements he's making in his own mind. When he hears that from another man, we've removed the emotional aspect. He's not trying to have sex with us. He's not trying to argue with us or fight with us. So when I say to a man, and I genuinely, hand on heart, had this week in a business meeting where we finished the business meeting about finance, and the gentleman in front of me said, can I have 10 minutes with you? I want to ask about ADHD and perimenopause. And he went on to say to me, my wife has just received a ADHD, or just been told she has she's clinically got ADHD. And she doesn't know how to deal with it. But at the same time, she's perimenopausal. So I said, okay, so what have you done? Well, I've tried to advise her. This is him speaking. I've tried to advise her on how she should react and what she should do on a daily basis. So I let him finish talking. And then I said to him, I'm not going to use his name. I said to him, okay, so what qualifies you to advise her on anything perimenopausal?
Hmm.
And he looked at me with a blank look. And before he could answer, I said, and what gives you the right to lecture her or advise her on being ADHD? Do you have ADHD? And he shook his head. So I said, so you as a man are now trying to give your woman advice on ADHD and perimenopause when you have neither. How do you think that conversation is going to end?
Yeah, the classic definition of mansplaining. it's
Correct.
and that's you're one thing you brought up, which is really interesting, is that approach is going to immediately put her on the defensive. And I've had men ask about how they can approach their wives with their own thoughts about this, but I've actually had women ask how they can approach their husbands about this as well. And I don't know if you've heard of this, but there is a tactic in having these types of conversations called FBI, and it stands for feelings, behavior, impact. And the one thing that you just mentioned was, she wakes up in the morning and she feels exhausted. She's saying, I feel exhausted, right? She's not saying I am exhausted. She's saying I feel exhausted. It's actually harder to argue and with people's feelings versus people stating facts. So when she says, I feel exhausted, you can't really argue with that. That's how she feels. Or if I'm feeling a certain way, it's hard to argue. So feeling behavior impact is a strategy that a woman could use with her husband or vice versa. But it would basically, let's say from a woman's standpoint, she would say to her husband, when I have these difficult symptoms that I'm going through and you don't believe me, it makes me feel like I'm not important to you. And my concern is that if that behavior continues, the impact will be that it's going to harm our relationship. And then you just stop talking and just let the person respond. And if the person starts to be argumentative again, you go through it again. When you talk to me this way, it makes me feel like you don't care about me. And my concern is that if this continues to be how we communicate, it's going to have a serious impact on our marriage. And then you stop talking. Feeling, behavior, impact. That's how you can get across these difficult feelings, these difficult situations, these difficult conversations in a way that takes down the defensiveness, takes down the sense of being attacked, and really tries to open up an important conversation.
Very good point.
So I
Very,
think
very good point.
the other thing that I hear in these comments, let me just go through a couple of these comments. Well, here you go. 8 minutes ago, I sent your video to my husband, and now he understands menopause and what's happening with my body. I feel like you wouldn't believe me. So that I mean, that's fantastic. That just shows that this type of conversation, men talking about this, I think makes a difference. And I do think that a couple men like you and me talking about menopause is something that is probably difficult to find. You know, we talk
Yes.
about menopause individually. I talk about menopause on my TikTok channel. There's men out there on TikTok who also talk about menopause, but to see two men coming together, even from different parts of the world, to talk about this, I think that that's really meaningful. I think it's certainly something that's meaningful to me. Like I love the fact that you and I have found each other in this space, and we as we can play the role of men, we can play the role of husbands. We can approach this topic from some different angles. And the fact that there's two men out there now, you and me, talking about menopause, quite honestly, not to put words in some woman's mouth, but I think that might blow their minds. I don't
Yep.
think that I don't think that women really expect a man to talk about menopause, let alone two men to come together and have conversations about this in efforts of educating other men. And the and while that's a wonderful thing, it reminds me I can't believe how rare what you and I are doing actually is. And that leads me to just realize, or that makes me realize, there's a long journey ahead here. There's a,
Correct.
if two men coming together from different parts of the world talking about menopause is not something you see everywhere, then we've got a ways to go.
Correct. And Jesse, I think that's really important what you just said there, and thank you for saying that. But that woman who commented, and you just read her comment, and she said she forwarded the video to her husband, and now he understands menopause. All I can say to that is now he's starting to learn about menopause. He doesn't
Now he's
understand
aware.
menopause.
Now he's aware
Correct.
of
Yeah,
menopause.
it's going to
Yes.
take more than one touch point.
Yeah.
It's going to take numerous touch points. It's going to take numerous conversations. It's going to take all sorts of information to start giving him more information. So well done to that woman, very much so, for sending it across to her hubby, and well done to her hubby for listening to it. But I need to urge him, that's just the starting point.
Hmm. That's just where it begins. And but it's such an important starting point. If there is that one man out there that is now even just more aware of menopause, that and open enough to have had a conversation with her about it, then that's an amazing starting point. I can tell
Correct.
you, you mentioned in the last episode that you had no idea about menopause at one point, right? I think your wife was going through it and you were not aware. You had no idea. And I remember when I first heard about this and was exposed to this from listening to a podcast with Dr. Mary Claire Haver, I also had no idea, right? And then as I've come to learn more about this, what I've started to realize is, my wife is also going through some of these symptoms. And based upon what women have shared with me so far, luckily for her so far, her symptoms aren't as serious as others, but they are there. And sometimes actually being aware of these symptoms when they're not quite as devastating and not quite as serious is also really important. Not sometimes, it is, because these things could be really dramatic. There could be a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression involved, a lot of insomnia involved, but there could also just be a little bit of that. And the little bit of that can become a bigger problem later, especially if two people aren't communicating about it. And one of the things that I have a heightened awareness of is, okay, here's where my wife is today as far as her menopausal journey. But I need to be aware that that can change. It is not always going to stay this way. I can't. We're not out of the woods yet just because she hasn't had a terrible experience in perimenopause. But that doesn't mean that as estrogen continues to decline and these hormones continue to crash, that something might spin up that's really difficult for her to handle. And if that happens, and I hope that it doesn't, but if that happens, I will absolutely be ready to talk to her about it and to support her. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve when we're educating men about menopause. It's be aware of this, and it may not be something you need to know now, but it will be something you need to know later. And
Correct. And it might, Jess, if I may jump in there for a
yeah,
second, your wife might only be in her 20s, or she might even be in her early 30s, and she might be years away from
yep,
perimenopause. But it is something that sooner or later she's going to get to. But you could be an employer of people, and you
mm-hmm.
might, in your workplace, have women of all different ages. And by having a little bit of knowledge about menopause, you can now look at your employees and understand what they might be going through.
Know why a certain employee seemed out of it in the meeting this morning, right? It could be as simple as that. Or an employee is having trouble getting to work on time, or an employee doesn't seem to be focusing, or they seem to be distant, or they seem to be depressed, or they're struggling even with anxiety if they're even telling you about that. I mean, there are so many signs that as an employer you could pick up, which I think is a great point to bring up. And I can tell you one thing, there are some statistics out there on this, and they are very, very low percentages of businesses that are doing anything about menopause or talking about menopause with their employees in any way, shape, or form. But 1% that I did read about was, I don't remember the exact number, but it was something over 40% of women have thought about quitting their jobs because of menopause. Not have quit their jobs, but have thought about quitting their jobs. In other words, this can be so difficult for women to manage that they would get to the point where they feel like they can't work anymore. They can't be in the workplace anymore. That isn't going to be changed by making menopause go away, because that won't happen. That's going to be changed by educating employers about what women are going through so that they can create support systems just like they do for other things, so that women can have the ability to take PTO, or even if it's just a sense of understanding, even if it's just a sense of compassion from leaders or management. We can start there. As much as there could be
Correct.
structural changes or things like that to the way the healthcare plans work within a certain workplace, if it's only can we bring awareness of this and make leaders understand that this is something that's real and something that's impacting their team. If we can do that, that's something.
And just a few days ago, literally in the last 10 days to 2 weeks in the USA, menopause and the conversation in the workplace has gone from silent to seismic. It really has. The FDA, they've signaled a total rethink of hormone therapy risk messaging.
Really?
So, they've gone and they've said 75 million women are recognized as part of an underinvested demographic, which is costing US business billions in productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I believe in the USA, you have certain products that has a sticker on, a black sticker about warnings
Sure.
uh, around hormonal health and the risk of cancer.
Yep.
I believe that's all being taken off of packaging because they've now worked out that information and that storytelling was incorrect.
Yep.
Here in the UK, we've had recent updates in May 2025 around menopause related can't even say the word.
Absenteeism. Yep.
Yeah, correct. And how it's costing UK employers £2 billion a year.
Unbelievable.
C-suite strategies are starting to step up.
Mm-hmm.
They're formally embedding menopause into DEI and ESG reporting frameworks. Menopause has now become a boardroom agenda point.
Wow.
Menopause education in secondary schools in the UK starting in September 2025. Boys and girls will now learn about hormonal health in school, which is normalizing the conversation, which is fantastic news. Big Pharma has pivoted hard into hormonal health, and Tesco's, one of our superstores, so a smaller version of Walmart,
Yep.
Tesco's have installed a menopause support stand in 93 stores.
Wow.
And this makes hormonal health a frontline retail priority. a sign of growing consumer and corporate demand. And why I'm mentioning all of this, this means in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, people are sitting up and taking notice. Governments are sitting up and taking notice. Conversations are happening. Conversations are happening in boardrooms. Conversations are happening at all different levels. There's a C-suite strategy which is taking part. So maybe all these conversations, not just us, the thousands of conversations that are happening are starting to stick and starting to stick well.
I think that's amazing. I have no doubt. I really don't. And I think some women would probably consider this to be naive, and I appreciate that. But I have no doubt that we are going to get to a place where this conversation on menopause is normal. This is something that any group of men anywhere understand, have heard about, are aware of access to information, understand how significant it is or how difficult it is, and there will always be different heights of awareness. There will always be different levels of acceptance for this type of thing. I understand that. We're not going to get to a place where it's just, sunshine and rainbows, but we will get to a place where this is normalized, not only in the vernacular of just conversation, but also in business. And the reason why I think that is because look at mental health today in comparison to 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, right? Post COVID, even. I think that accelerated a lot of conversation around mental health. And this is another one of those things that will get accelerated. And the reason why mental health is normal today was because at some point people started to talk about it out loud. And they didn't hide from it, they didn't shy away from it, they didn't feel like they couldn't say anything, they didn't feel like they didn't have support because they knew that support was there. And therapists, going to a therapist became so normal that there were no more therapists left to even find appointments. And that's kind of a good problem to have in a way, because it means people are taking care of their mental health. This is something, because there is such a mental health aspect to it, I think this is something that's going to fall into that same line of acceptance and normalcy. It's going to take time, but it's happening. It's happening right now.
It is, without a shadow of a doubt. Jesse, one of the areas of concern, though, for me, sitting in the UK, looking at different sectors, looking at different demographics, is one of the areas of issue around menopause is in different places of the world. So you can imagine being a menopausal woman in the UK or the USA is going to be totally different to being a menopausal woman in tribal Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken to friends, and tribes look upon menopause in a different way. It's a forbidden type subject to talk about.
I just
Now
got a
you go in,
comment from a woman in Thailand saying the exact same
okay,
thing.
saying the same thing.
Exact same thing.
Now you go into countries like the Middle East, and you go into certain cultures, the Muslim culture. You can just imagine that their women are in a completely different place to, say, a Christian woman in Europe. um and I think there's a lot of cultural negativities around menopause, and in so many areas, probably in our own backyards, it's still completely taboo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This woman in Thailand basically said, in her perspective, which I actually don't agree with. Her perspective was women in the Western world could learn a thing or two from the way women in Thailand handle this. These are her words, her comment. And I wish I could find it, but I won't be able to find it here. But basically, she was saying that women in Thailand handle menopause better because they basically accept it as a reality and they don't complain about it. They don't, whatever issues they're facing, hot flashes, lack of sleep, pain, otherwise mental trouble, troubles that are associated with it. That's just the way it is. We don't talk about it. We don't complain about it. We move forward. We march on. We are women. We are strong. We can handle this. It is a negative thing. And the way in which it was presented to me was it's a negative thing to bring this type of pain and difficulty upon others around you. Culturally, that was what she was saying was the case.
Which
And
is so sad.
which is so sad, and certainly not something I feel women anywhere can learn from. I would not agree with that perspective or approach to handling this at all. And I thought it was interesting that this woman was actually putting that type of thinking on a pedestal. And and it sounded like she was in Thailand or from Thailand, so she was speaking on behalf of that experience in that culture. But as I listen to the idea of this being something that women, in other cultures have to deal with, have to endure, have to accept, I guess there's a level of acceptance of this is something that happens to every single woman. But beyond that, the impact that it has on you physically or mentally is not something you need to just accept. That there are solutions for those things. And when I first started learning about menopause, I actually didn't know that, and I just thought, wow, this is an incredible amount of pain and difficulty that women are just going to have to go through until it goes away. And what I came to understand is there are actually a lot of solutions out there. There are a lot of different ways women can, in fact, impact the way in which menopause is impacting them. And I think that that's something that I hope women who are listening just understand and look into, right? I'm not here to present what those solutions are to women because I'm not a medical professional, but I do believe from what I've heard from women who are medical professionals, there are a number of different ways that women can make menopause and the difficulties of menopause easier on them. They just have to find the right professional who's certified, who understands this, and can provide those solutions. But I think it's comforting to know that those solutions are out there for women who seek them.
So it's going to be really interesting. So next week, we have a guest coming onto the show who is a documentary, what's the correct word?
Like a filmmaker?
Producer. Yeah, documentary filmmaker, documentary producer.
Mm-hmm.
And she's going to be coming on. She's busy making a movie about men and menopause. And she's taking a humorous angle at it as well as a serious angle. So she is English. She lives in Dubai. It's going to be
Okay.
really interesting to talk to her about these
Yep.
cultural differences. And the week after that, I have a woman coming on who runs a very, very large community in the Middle East. And her entire community is female and it's all about menopause. So we're going to start touching on some of these subjects, and which is going to be really interesting, really, really interesting as we're pushing forward.
100%. I can't wait to hear from them and so many other guests that we're going to be bringing on these podcasts who are everything from athletes to professionals to medical professionals to other men who are passionate about this who want to talk about this and want to share their experiences. So I think that I can't wait for that, and I can't wait to see where we head from here.
Me too, Jesse. I think we've got a fantastic opportunity here to speak to so many people, which
100%.
I think is so very valuable to them and to us. So, Jesse, thank you for everything you're doing. I think we're deep into 50 minutes again, which is fantastic. As I say, next week we've got a guest coming on. The week after we've got a guest coming on, and the week after that we've got a guest coming on. So,
Yep.
I urge everyone, make sure that you save this to your favorites. And keep on coming back because we're going to have some fantastic content moving forward.
Absolutely. Please subscribe, and we look forward to talking with you soon.